everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of the UK Gaming Network podcast. I'm Zoidberg, and for the last few days I've been playing the brilliant Control. This is the latest game from Remedy Entertainment, although if you know anything about the developer's back catalogue, you could have probably worked that out for yourself. It's a third-person action game with an excellent combat system and a strong narrative focus, just like Max Payne, Alan Wake and Quantum Break before it. It also features TV screens that crackle into life, a heavy influence on sci-fi horror, and a voiceover, all of which are signatures of their work too. There's an incredible attention to detail to even minor features in their games like the authenticity of FMV sequences and the backstory that you discover through collectibles. Most players won't even take the time to see it. Yet even despite the similarities, all of their games are individual enough to stand on their own merits. Control plays like an updated version of Midway's PsyOps the Mindgate conspiracy, as you have the ability to fling furniture and masonry around enemies during combat. It also allows the player to experiment and improvise each and every encounter, which stops it from getting boring, and because the gun regenerates its own ammo, you don't even have to stop to look for pickups during combat. The game is set almost entirely within the walls of the Federal Bureau of Control, and there's a strong element of exploration. You regularly run past doorways that are inaccessible until later in the story, but you won't mind backtracking thanks to the great pacing of the central mystery, the interesting characters that you'll meet, and the thrilling combat. It's clearly the work of a developer that has been left alone to make the game that they want to make, and it single-handedly restored my faith in AAA gaming. If it's not in my top 5 games of the year come December, I'll be very surprised. Remedy are, of course, not the only developer who have a signature style. Here's a list of some more of our favourites. To narrow it down, we've excluded developers who have only worked within the confines of a single franchise, or have less than 3 games in their catalogue. Number 5. From Software. Before 2009, From Software were most well known for the Armored Core series of mech shooters, but then along came Demon's Souls. Suddenly, gamers the world over remembered how much fun it is to be challenged, as long as that challenge is fair. However, the origin of the series can be traced all the way back to Kingsfield on the PlayStation 2, which may be played in first person, but the similarities are obvious. Dungeons, nightmarish creatures, a feeling of helplessness and environmental storytelling were all present. The success of Demon's Souls led to the Dark Souls series, Bloodborne and most recently Sekiro. We can only hope that Elden Ring, the forthcoming collaboration with George R.R. Martin, doesn't stray too far from the template. Number 4. PopCap. PopCap games were the undisputed masters of casual score-based gaming, games that you could play between other games in quick 5-minute chunks. Every single one of their releases is among the best in its class. Want a match 3 puzzle game? Play Bejeweled or Zuma. Want tower defense? Plants vs Zombies has you covered. Or if you just want to relax and gobble up fish, then Feeding Frenzy is the game for you. Their use of sound is also extremely memorable. Case in point, the inclusion of Ode to Joy as the victory fanfare in Peggle. They were bought out by EA in 2011, but that hasn't stopped them from producing amazing games, even if they have featured intrusive microtransactions. And the Garden Warfare series still features plenty of their trademark humour. Number 3. Housemarque. If you ever thought that they don't make arcade games like they used to, you've clearly never played a game from Finnish developers Housemarque. Stardust, an excellent spin on Asteroids, announced their arrival back in the days of the Amiga, and Super Stardust HD was one of the first great downloadable games on the PlayStation 3, but it was Resogun that turned heads the most. It's considered by most to be the best launch title on the PlayStation 4, with its precise gameplay, thumping soundtrack and frequent showers of particles. Even their lesser-known titles like Outland, Matterfall and Alienation have the developers' fingerprints all over them, but it's the superb Nex Machina that is, for us, their true masterpiece. Number 2. Quantic Dream. In another life, David Cage would have probably made movies rather than found Quantic Dream. The output of the once Sony-owned studio is almost entirely cinematic, where, as the technology has improved, the visuals have got more and more photorealistic. From Fahrenheit to Detroit, each game has taken in a different subject matter, whether it's serial killers, psychological horror or a droid uprising. The stories are never less than interesting, even if they never quite end in a satisfactory manner. In gameplay terms, you can expect a lot of quick-time events and dialogue choices, usually leading to one of a number of endings in the hope that you'll want to play through it again. Number 1. The Behemoth. Having a signature style doesn't always have to refer to the gameplay. The Behemoth have made 4 games across 4 different genres, but they are all unmistakably the product of the same minds. This is mainly down to the fantastic contribution of artist Dan Paladin, whose fabulous cartoon characters populate all of their games. Alien Hominid, Castle Crashers, Battle Block Theatre and Pit People are all great games in their own right, and have a rich vein of off-the-wall humour flowing through them that makes them all consistently hilarious. 4 games in 15 years shows that they are not a developer who can be rushed, and we're quite happy to wait however long it takes to see what they come up with next. While Control was the biggest new game release this week, it's now time to give our verdict on the rest of the games we've been playing. Here's this week's reviews. Originally intended as a game for the PlayLink collection, Erica is an interactive thriller that was surprise released by Sony during the opening night of Gamescom. From the moment you start playing, it's clear that the production values are much higher than other similar games, and the acting is of a much higher standard than you'd expect. It blends the film sequences with interactive elements pretty well, although you can definitely tell when everything freezes, including the actors in the background, while the game waits for you to do something. Thankfully, it's not enough to break the immersion though. You can still download an app on your phone to play, but we found there to be no need, as the touchpad on the DualShock works perfectly fine. A single playthrough will take you about 2 hours, which is the perfect length as the trophy list reveals many alternate paths that could have been taken through the game. For less than a tenner, it's definitely a game that you should take a look at. Finally available on consoles, Bugbear's Wreckfest is a hugely enjoyable racing game with an emphasis on total destruction. It's entirely possible to mangle your car until it's completely unrecognisable, not to mention undrivable, but fortunately you can also do the same to your opponents. I found the best way to win certain types of races was to try and stay away from trouble as much as you can, but there are times when you simply can't. It's great fun, but playing on the Xbox One X there are definite performance issues with regular drops in the frame rate during races, but considering the amount of carnage that's understandable. Loading times are a major issue, with races taking the best part of 2 minutes from menu to track. Although this has improved slightly since a recent patch, it's still not great. The menus are a little sparse, with important information and unlocks being easy to miss, and a more focused career mode would have been nice. Fortunately, the on-track action is always excellent, and there's a substantial number of tracks and race types to take part in, meaning that you can easily live with all the flaws. Although it's been out since February, we'd completely overlooked Ape Out, which as it turns out is one of the year's hidden gems. You play as an ape escaping from captivity, but you do this by making your way through level after level of gun-toting guards, and an increasing number of hazards, like locked doors and alarms. Being an ape, the only moves that you have at your disposal are a powerful attack and the ability to grab an unsuspecting guard to use as a shield. Each time you die, your exact path through a level is shown, and you can instantly restart with the layout changing slightly each time to keep it interesting. Controls are simple, but we'd recommend the joypad over a mouse and keyboard, and the minimalist presentation is fantastic, with sharp colours and a neat distortion effect over the top. If you're a Game Pass Ultimate subscriber, you should add it to your download list as soon as possible. Time to bring this week's show to a close, and we do so in the usual way by selecting our Retro Game of the Week. Second Sight, from Timesplitters developer Free Radical Design, is an occasionally misunderstood game that doesn't get enough recognition, and as it turns 15 years old next week, we dug it out for another go. First thing to mention is that the storytelling is still excellent, and it actually feels like 2 games in one. In one chapter, the game's hero wakes up after an unspecified but devastating event with psychic powers and amnesia, where the aim is to work out where you are and escape. Then the next chapter begins and you flash back 6 months to the start of an infiltration mission, kicking off the events that led to the disaster. As each level passes, the chapters continue to alternate, and you learn more about what happened as your powers get stronger. The pace is deliberately slower than you'd expect, which is probably why the game suffered in direct comparison with Psyops, as that was released around the same time. It has the same excellent visual style as the Timesplitters series, and voice acting is great too. Although it does commit the gaming crime of unskippable cutscenes, it stands up very well today. This is exactly the type of game that should get an HD remake, to give it another chance of finding the audience that it deserves. Did you play Second Sight when it came out? What did you think? Tell us about your memories of it in the comments. We hope you enjoyed this episode. Give us a like and subscribe to make sure you don't miss the next one. We'll be back with another review-packed show next week as the new releases start to arrive thick and fast. Until then, thanks for listening. Bye for now.